at that time.
That must have been a long time ago.
Yes.
Like 50 years.
Let's get into some of the frustrations you had throughout the journey. You have spoken quite extensively, but just get into the details of your journey.
Hi, welcome to our family podcast, Passing Down the Gown, the Bingo Legacy. We're a family consisting of a mother and her 2 daughters, each with their unique story of how we got to where we are today. We are passionate about personal development and inspiring personal development in others. But one thing we've noticed is that when it comes to our communities of people of color, there isn't a lot of mentors within our community, which makes a missed opportunity when it comes to access to information. Sometimes we think that there's only one way of doing something, which makes us very disappointed when things don't go according to plan. But we're here to show you guys that life is not one-dimensional and the road to success can be achieved through various means. Through the sharing of our stories, we wish to inspire people who are possibly feeling a little bit stuck and needing some encouragement. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our mother, Dr. Lillian Bingo, with a PhD in industrial psychology, as well as an MBA, just to name a few of her qualifications. Then I'll introduce to you my older sister, Ntombifuthi Bingo, who holds a master's in chemical engineering and is a current PhD candidate in the civil engineering department at the University of Galway. Lastly, I'll introduce myself, the rebel with a cause, and corporate baddie and avid believer in lateral qualifications. Today, we will be talking about the impact of education on a family. And to start us off, Mother, how has your journey been with education from the start?
Well, I started falling for education from my early teens, and this was prompted by my mother. My mother loved education, and she wanted to go further with her education. The the brother is the one who was taking care of her education. So, but her desire to study further was curtailed with the passing of her brother. So she had a friend who studied with her in primary. Fortunately for this lady, she went further with her education and she obtained a nursing certificate. And my mother kept talking about her to me. It was like, I know this person. And after completing primary education with my sister, my mother wanted us to go further for secondary education. But now the secondary school where we're supposed to go to was outside the city. So then my mother thought maybe if we can go and study in a boarding school. But then my father was against it because he thought that we're still young and at the same time we might even fall pregnant. So this resulted us in studying through correspondence. So we completed our secondary education through correspondence with my sister. So then after completing, I decided to register for Pittman's secretarial courses, which were marked in England. Then after that, I completed my Pittman's, and
Okay.
that was it at that time.
All right. I'll then segue into my sister's story. And Dombi, I'll extend the same question to you. What was your journey like with education, if you could take us from the start?
Well, with me, from primary, I was always good with mathematics. And then once I got to high school, chemistry became another subject that I was good at. And it made sense that I'd follow a career that was science based. Then I registered for my first year with the University of Northwest. When I completed my matric, I was doing a BSc in physics and chemistry. And then halfway down the year, I changed it to a BSc with chemistry and applied mathematics. Upon completing the first year successfully, I actually obtained, I think, 10 distinctions.
Yo.
My mom then sat me down and was like, hey, what are you actually going to do with the science degree when you complete it? Let us then change it and go into chemical engineering. So that's when I registered for my first year with UCT for chemical engineering.
Oh, wow. Okay. Dr. B, you last spoke about doing a Pittman's qualification in secretarial studies. Was that the end of your journey with education?
No, it wasn't. In actual fact, with my Pittman's certificates, I managed to get a job as a secretary at the University of Bophuthatswana. And Ntomfuti was a year old at that time.
That must have been a long time ago.
Yes.
Like 50 years.
So it, as a tertiary institution, it has as one of its benefits a free tuition. So I decided to make use of that benefit. Then, because we were also encouraged to develop ourselves further, so I applied and registered for a diploma in personnel management with the institution personnel management institution, IPM, and on part-time basis because I was still working. Then after completing my diploma, I registered for a postgraduate diploma in business studies. Then after that, I registered for MBA, and after completing my MBA, I registered for an honors degree in human resources because now it had moved from personnel management to human resources. After completing my
human
resource honors degree, then the head of the department, I thought maybe they could absorb me and teach part-time while at the same time still registered for a master's degree in industrial relations.
And still being a secretary.
Still being a secretary and a mom. Then when I completed my master's, my head of the department wanted me to be absorbed full-time. And then I decided, okay, I cannot just stop here. Let me continue and registered for a PhD in industrial psychology, which I did.
But did they absorb you full-time at that stage?
No.
Okay, I'll come to that in a second. Ndombi, what were some of your experiences after getting to UCT?
So the first year, I actually failed my major subject, which was chemical engineering 101. I started off with a DP of 86% for the year. And then after December's exam, I had an average of about 45, 46%. So I repeated the course the next year. I passed it. Then I went into second year. Second year, I also I was academically excluded
Sure.
to a point where one of my lecturers actually said that I was not cut out to be an engineer. So instead of being defeated, my mom and I decided that maybe I must change institutions but still pursue qualification in chemical engineering. So I then went to the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, where I did my first year. Some of my courses that I'd already passed, I was obviously credited for. So I did my national diploma. Then, upon receiving my in-service training with Chevron at that stage, the refinery here in Cape Town, I was working as a process engineer trainee. And funny enough, the very same lecturer who had said that I was not cut out to be an engineer did a plant visit with a class. And she was very proud to tell the rest of my colleagues that, oh, Dombi was a student of mine. And I was just looking at her, I didn't say anything. Upon completion, Chevron did offer me employment as an operator. However, I told them that no, I'd like to go back to university and further my education. So I registered for a BTech in chemical engineering, still with CPUT. Then after graduating a year later, I went for a year and a half struggling to find employment. But I ended up doing some volunteer work with ArcelorMittal Science Center in Friedenberg, where we were responsible for trying to engage the youngsters of the community in science and mathematics so that they could actually be a pool of employment for the ArcelorMittal refinery. So I think I spent about a month and a half working there, and
Sure,
then
it felt like longer because the struggle was real back then.
It was real. I worked for like a month and a half, and then my mom said, "Listen, there's an opportunity for you to come and do your masters, doing research on fuel cell. There's actually funding for it." So I left the volunteer job, and then I came back to CPUT to register for my Master of Engineering.
Mother, let's get into some of the frustrations you had throughout the journey. You know, you have spoken quite extensively, but just get into the details of your journey.
You know, after obtaining all these qualifications, no matter how much I try to apply for a better position in my institution, I couldn't get any position. And I remember there was a time when my head of the department took me to the then Vice Chancellor and told him that we have this lady with all these qualifications, and why can't we try by all means to place her, because she's already doing part-time teaching, but we wanted to be absolute full-time. There's nothing. The person told me that the vice chancellor said, we don't have any openings. But I was teaching part-time.
So what course are you teaching that that cannot be converted, you know?
Even, you see, another thing that really frustrated me is because I knew that because of the professional jealousy, I wasn't going to get anything from, especially I got the opposition from the academic staff because I was more qualified than them. I mean, the majority of them, especially in the department where I was working. And this thing didn't sit well with me because I really wanted to progress. I didn't want to remain being a secretary, while knowing very well that I was even more qualified than the acting dean. He had an honors degree. Can you imagine? I had a postgraduate diploma in business studies. I had an honors degree. I had an MBA. I had a master's degree in industrial relations. And he had only an honors degree.
Yeah.
He had only 2 qualifications.
Yeah, his undergrad and his honors.
Yes, this is why when he was called in by the top management to go and when they advised him to go and motivate for me, for my conditions of employment, to change from administrative staff to academic, he never did it. And it also didn't sit well for me, because now having these oppositions on the other side, and also knowing very well that I have these qualifications, and this gave me a lot of stress that I ended up having some illnesses.
Sure. It's amazing how a toxic environment,
Yes,
or an environment where you're frustrated, you've done everything right,
you can.
but people are just blocking you because of that professional jealousy or even academic jealousy.
Exactly.
But you can't come out of the situation.
Exactly.
It can actually lead to stress and depression, anxiety, and even heart conditions, like in my mother's case.
Yeah.
But Mom, we'll get to your story
Okay.
a little bit later. I just want to touch base with Dombi in terms of her frustrations along the way.
So, my frustrations, they started first with the lack of supervision that I was getting for my masters. I ended up spending about 7 years on a master's that was going nowhere. I was still on chapter 2, not progressing any further, did not design any experiments, and a lot of the time, people around me assumed that it was because of lack of input from my side. However, I was in a situation where the one supervisor who would give you input, then this one is saying no, they want it at a different from a different direction.
So it was
But then if you give this one who wants it from a different direction, they don't give you feedback. So then you're just sitting there, So I just sat there for so long. I had colleagues who were close to me who were just like, listen, Dombi, why don't you let me supervise you? And this colleague was actually a classmate who became a friend, a colleague, and eventually my supervisor. But he was not even the first. There was another gentleman who had even approached my mom before to say, listen, I can see your daughter's not getting supervision. I'm willing to supervise her behind her supervisor's backs. But I did not want to cause any conflict, so I just let it slide. But lucky for me, in 2019, he then became the head of the department for my department, and he marched into my office one day. He was just like, listen, Dombi, you are now going to change direction. We're going to forget about this master's. You're going to start a new master's from scratch. I'm going to give you a supervisor, and that's it. And the supervisor he gave me, like I had mentioned, had actually been my colleague, my classmate, my friend. And he was like, listen, people are talking behind you in the faculty, in the department. People are laughing at you that you're not finishing. Let us actually prove them wrong, because he knew my capabilities, he knew the potential that I had. So I was like, okay, cool. So 2019, I registered for a master's from scratch that had to look into microbes and all of that. I never did biology in high school. So I was going back to where you have to learn what is a molecule, what is microbes, what is this. So yeah, it was challenging, but it was worth it at the end. Then I finally made a response to those people who were talking in the corridors. I graduated 3 years later, due to COVID as well. with a cum laude. And I published a review paper, conference proceeding, and I also published a paper in Elsevier Journal, one of the high impact factor journals. And yeah, I'm now a cited author.
Wow.
So I did turn my frustrations into a positive.
And then also on that note, now your career, your academic career was finally prospering, and you shut them up.
Yes.
Basically, you shut them up in terms of the negative things that they were selling, and you proved yourself to be that studious student and an A student at that.
Yeah.
But on the professional side, did they recognize you?
They actually made it difficult because I wanted to transition from being a technical staff member to an academic staff member. And one of my colleagues actually approached us. I think we had just completed our masters, and he was like, listen, there are lecturing positions that are coming up, but they were contract, and I was on a permanent employment, you know. So I thought, no, it doesn't make sense for me to now move for a contract position. You know, I've got a daughter, I have responsibilities and so forth. So my supervisor for the successful masters then said to me, hey, why don't you tell them that you're willing to lecture for free? Because look at it this way, you're gaining experience, and no one can take that away from you. You can use that experience for something else, you know. So I spoke with my colleague, and he was like, oh, okay, I'm going to propose this to the other acting HOD, because he was also an acting HOD. And they shut it down. They're just like, there is no way a technical staff member can lecture. However, I had asked our previous HR partner, and he was like, where do they say that? Because there are people in other departments who are busy lecturing, and they move from technical staff with the same qualification that you have. So it does not make sense, you know. So it was quite evident that, okay, there were people who were plotting against my success. Maybe I rubbed them up the wrong way by completing my master's, who knows, you know. But at the end of the day, nobody holds the key to my destiny except myself and the man upstairs.
And adding on to your story, you managed to publish before you graduated.
Yes.
And you know, one of the requisitions which are given by the institutions in order for you to, for your exams to be, for your marks to be approved, we have to show evidence that you have published all conference proceedings. But with you, we had outdid it 3 times.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have any hold on you.
No. And it was also a way for me to ensure that the people marking my thesis were aware that my work has already been peer reviewed by experts. So it's going to be difficult for them to find any defaults in it, you know. So yeah.
Sure, that's an amazing story of resilience, really.
Yeah.
So, Mother, what was your breakthrough?
Okay. When I realized that there was nothing which was happening at that institution, I decided to apply at my hometown. Fortunately, I got a job at CPUT, where Ntombi was studying. I worked as a coordinator in the Center for Postgraduate Studies, where I was also an NRF representative for CPUT, and my job mostly entailed, servicing from BTech up to postdoc fellows. I used to review their proposals whenever they were applying for scholarships at NRF. I mean, right through across the board at the institution. So this, with that, I really thought that now I'm making use of my qualification because I used it to also motivate students. I was also presenting the research methodologies to students who couldn't understand and so forth. And I was also responsible for the higher degrees committee. I was more of a gatekeeper. Like, for instance, all along when she was studying, I always had this feeling that not only in her faculty, because it's a higher degrees committee for the institution. They were also looking at my daughter to see if she's making any progress.
Sure. So that must have been a stressful time, you working at the same institution that your daughter is working at, and she's not progressing, and you are also sitting on committees where, they are looking at the progress or the throughput of the students in that institution at a postgraduate level.
Exactly.
So it's almost more glaring to you because you're right there and she's facing possible exclusion. But I'm so glad that she actually ended up graduating, like she said. And Dombi, you seemed to be in desperate need of a breakthrough as well at that stage after having graduated finally, but your job was not jobbing.
My job was not jobbing. It was not make sure. No, I actually was in desperate need of a breakthrough because I was now at a point where my increase was not on the same level as inflation.
Exactly.
So when I started as a lab technician, I felt like I was rolling, even bought a new car, things were moving. But as the years went by, my salary was starting to afford less and less of the things that I could afford once I joined the department. And I found myself in a situation where I was living from hand to mouth. I have a growing child. I'm a single parent. I don't have the financial support of her father. So I had to make a move, and I had to make a bold move.
Huge move.
Exactly.
If anything was going to change. So after graduating, I applied for lecturing positions throughout institutions here in South Africa, but I was not getting any feedback. Not even an acknowledgement of, okay, we've received your application.
And at this stage, how old were you?
Yeah.
And you haven't actually been in a professional job relating to your studies.
I was 39 years old. I was 38, turning 39. So it was in April where I was getting no feedback, and you were like, hey, there are opportunities for you to do your PhD abroad and get paid for it. And you know me, I'm the obedient child. I listen. I did some research. I applied for, I think, 3 programs at that stage. One of them, it was actually intended for students who are already in the UK, so I didn't qualify. And then the other one, I was struggling with the application process because a lot of these institutions, you don't just have to submit a CV. They've got a portal in which you need to do your application. And I was not making, I was not understanding the process itself. Then there was another one that I applied to at the University of Galway. It was also similar to what I had done in my master's. And in October, no, firstly on the 26th of July,
which is next week,
2022,
it's the year anniversary.
I served my resignation letter. And I think it was such a relief for me, because it was as if I was now telling my haters that you have no control over me. Now I'm going to fly and there's nothing you can do to stop that.
Exactly.
So I got a fully funded scholarship. I'm currently doing my PhD, as you had mentioned, at the University of Galway in Ireland. And now I've come home to actually come and fetch my daughter because the program is a 4-year program. So she's going to continue growing that side.
So you couldn't be accepted as a lecturer in the institution that groomed you from the beginning.
Yes.
But you were recognized by an institution abroad.
Yes.
And they were giving you a fully funded scholarship stipend.
Yes, to a point where even my stipend was almost double what I was taking home while working. So I've also now got this financial freedom, you know, because now I'm able to provide for my daughter on another level. I mean, I'm even able to go shopping for myself, you know, so it's and, you know, being away from the toxic work environment, that has just uplifted my spirit so much.
So you took a social challenge that many young people go through, which is graduate youth unemployment. I mean, not only is our unemployment bad within South Africa, but when you look at the youth unemployment, it is exponentially bad. And within that group, there's also graduates who think, I've done things right, I've studied, I've gone to university, you know, and then you have challenges along the way. And even as you progress, working in an environment where it's not really what you were studying for, maybe working roles like admin positions and all of that just to get ahead. But when you're supposed to get that opportunity for you to break through, that very same institution does not support you in a way, but you're recognized by someone else.
Exactly.
So right now, what are you doing to help others who are in the same situation as you?
So this is now something that we've always done, like you've said in your introduction. We've seen it from our mom, who would always be encouraging people to study further so that they can maximize their potential or reach their dreams, you know. So what we have done, especially looking at the process that I went through, and now being an international student ambassador for my university in Ireland, I'm also privy to certain information where I'm fully aware that universities abroad are trying to turn into global universities where they're trying to actively recruit students from the African continent, you know, and they're also providing scholarships to assist, because obviously when you look at my school fees, which is like 14,000 euros, that is how many hundreds and thousands of rands? That's a lot of money.
20.
Yeah, so obviously I would not have the financial capacity to pay those fees. And what we've done is then we've designed an info session, which is like an information session, where we show people how to go about looking for these scholarships. We also give them tips on how to write compelling statements, how to make their CVs more attractive, you know, give them some sort of guidance so that they can also to leverage these opportunities abroad. And I mean, my mom has worked in higher education. I have also worked in higher education for 10 years, where we, as you've mentioned, where we have youth who have graduated but are struggling to find employment. I was even one of those for a year and a half, you know. So instead of sitting down and not doing anything or just looking for petty jobs for you to live from hand to mouth, there are opportunities that are open to us, as well as looking at the fact that universities abroad, they have what would I say, capacity in terms of seats to accommodate students, while here in South Africa we are finding it difficult because with a population of over 60 million we only have 26 universities. However, in Ireland, with a population of just over 5 million, they have 35 universities already. They have a leg up, you know. So, I mean, even if you look at the state of California, they have over 400 universities just in the state of California, with a population of 40 million.
I've noticed that every year in January, you'll find on TikTok people complaining that like it becomes a hashtag, you know, I got a rejection from UJ, I got it. So some of the qualifying students, so students who meet that entrance criteria, are actually not getting in.
No.
Because simply a space allocation issue.
But
then on the other hand, you're saying the maths is the other way around when it comes to international countries.
Yes.
But where must we get the money to study? Where does the money come from?
Like I said, the universities abroad, they also provide scholarships. Even the governments. Now, where this stems from is looking at the United Nations proposal of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, where now governments have to implement in their national strategies ways of resolving these 17 goals, whether it is eliminating poverty, hunger, gender inequality, access to water and sanitation. It's a lot. And the universities themselves also have a role to play by ensuring that intellect as well as funding is backing projects that have innovative solutions, and they also have to try and attract talent from across the world, because this is not something that can just be resolved by the first world countries, We have to get talent from across the world. Not only that, also from different disciplines. For example, my PhD is looking at wastewater treatment, and I am doing my PhD in the civil engineering department, and yet I come from a chemical engineering background. And then my colleague, who is from Sri Lanka, he is coming from a mechanical engineering background, and we're both working on the same project. So now you also see that the universities abroad, they've also got diversity in terms of cross discipline, So, yeah.
Wow. I hear this all the time, but it gets me.
It does, hey?
Dr. B, I want to know, when ungena Pillai uplifted abroad, what are you doing now post-retirement?
Well, what I'm doing now, I'm also motivating people, especially who come on uplifted abroad, like parents, when they talk for their children, trying to see what help they can get. But I also encourage those parents that they should not only focus on their children, they should also focus on themselves, because they can improve themselves better. Like with me, in order for me to be what I am today, I wanted to set a fine example for my daughters, because I asked myself that, I'm getting older, and still being a secretary, companies are now looking for younger generations. Where will I be in future? Will I still remain a secretary when I'm trying to take care of my children? So that's when I decided that in order for me to improve my child, I must also do it myself. So I do that. In fact, I appear on special occasions.
Yes, not just for anyone. Not just anyone. Don't be any final thoughts and words.
My final thoughts and words are, firstly, that you're the only person who holds the key to your success, and do not let the noise coming from outside confirm that you are that person. No, you know who you are. You work with who you are to achieve what you want, and you also should not give up in life. You're never too old. My mom, like she said, when my mom went back to high school, I was already in primary. So she went and started from scratch. She even had to do her matric, which we didn't even delve into, so you're never too old.
Over 40.
Yeah, she was over my age. She was over 40 when she went back to matric. So you should not let anything deter you, and work at it, Opportunities are there, and this is why we also designed this info session, to ensure that the information is meeting the people it is actually targeting. We've got scholarships that are even open for people without age restrictions, So I think people should really take these opportunities and run with them.
Well, guys, you've heard from Dr. Bingo as well as Dr. Bingo to be. 2 generations, 2 wonderful, successful woman. I don't like to say powerful, but wonderful woman, phenomenal women who've gone through many challenges to get to where they are. The journey with education never stops. The journey to continuous improvement never stops. And lastly, guys, the opportunities are out there. You just have to grab them. Thank you for joining us on our family podcast, Passing Down the Gown, the Bingo Legacy.
Bye.